Hello everybody, today we're talking about Final Fantasy Tactics, and it's not going to be a flashy video, it's going to be an informative one. I'm going to go through the 4 Final Fantasy Tactics UR units that we are going to see coming back toward the Visions on Wednesday, and I will make a video at some point about Mysidia and Gafgarian. I just don't want to put too much into one video, so I'll just cover this. I'll do a video about the VCs as well today so we can get that information before the banners, but otherwise just wait for those MR units later on. I'm going to go through all of these units in the order where I start with the least effective units to the ones that I think will be most effective in the global meta. So unfortunately, it kills me. It kills me to say that I'm starting with Ramza, who is one of my favorite all-time units. When I got him at the start of War of the Visions, he was a huge character for my account for a very long time. He was actually my main tank for a very, very long time. And he did that role early on. Now he can't really do that anymore, but at the time it was pretty interesting. So with all of these tactics units, they're getting master ability 2s, and they're also going to be getting some EX job upgrades, and there's even some global exclusive VC upgrades. So we'll take a look at all of those, starting with the master ability 2 for Ramza. He's going to get a limit burst Ultima upgrade, which is really cool. He also gets the light HP up and light attack up that all of these units will be getting for their respective elements. And then he gets more slash attack, so it's 20 instead of 10, and he gets 20% slash resist penetration. Now, when he equips the Blades of Grass card, he also gets another probably 40% slash resist penetration. So the problem is that that's a fire card. It is a card for everybody in terms of the accuracy that it gives. The attack percentage on the bestowed is for any element unit, but you're not necessarily going to be running that in a light team when you're already stretching a light team a bit to put Ramza into it. So it is a tricky situation where he doesn't have that much penetration, and he doesn't have any innate defense penetration, although he can apply some. So if you're wondering about Ramza, one of the cool things about him is that he's got a lot of utility. He's got this 2 jump, 3 move, but has Shukuchi, so he can go up to 4 and 3, and then he has Taunting Spell, which will give him a lot of range because of the range of it, the AoE, and the height difference that it has. He's also able to, if he uses resist magic, have a decent magic resistance, but he actually starts negative. One of the cool things about Ramza when he came out was his resistances were actually pretty good. So slash resist 15%, strike and missile 15%, no pierce, weak to magic. But this was a pretty good stat line for a new unit. And when we look at his max level stats here, you can see his HP, it's pretty good for a DPS support unit. He's kind of in that Noctis, Astrius range, but the rest of his stats aren't really spectacular. You know, his agility is middling, his attack and magic are both just okay. Now keep in mind he's going to be putting a pretty big buff to those two things a lot of the time, but they're not very high, and his passives don't really increase those. His accuracy also isn't very good, and he only has the 100% hit, which is his limit burst. So he doesn't look like the most spectacular unit on paper. However, he did get some very cool EX upgrades, and the one that we're going to look at first is his Shimmering Blade, which now has an AoE. So we can see there it's got that cross-shaped AoE. It also gives a 25 defense and Spirit Break, and gives himself 30% defense penetration afterwards. Now, he doesn't have any before that, so he's going to attack not penetrating anything. At least he'll break 25. Then after the damage, he'll get that defense penetration. That is a bummer that it doesn't come beforehand, but this is a very cool effect. It's a really cool PvE effect because you can use that in just to use like mixed parties, and for PvP it's also a pretty cool effect to have for mixed parties, and will definitely be one of his most used attacks. Now this effect here, this wish or chance, whatever you want to call it, consumes own HP 10%, and it has a big old heal. That's actually a really good guild battle to play, where you can actually get him to heal someone up pretty significantly, and he doesn't lose that much HP. So something to keep in mind. It's pretty neat. Now, Shout is the biggest upgrade here, because you can see that the upgrades go from a 30% buff to attack and magic to a 60% attack and magic buff. Now that's obviously really important for him because he has lower stats, but it's also, again, it doesn't matter what party you put him in, he's going to be benefiting everybody, and he even gives everybody protect, himself included. So that's a pretty nice little thing to make sure that he has some survivability against physical damage. He also has a physical barrier that gives him single target resistance and slash attack up. That's also looking real good for for him. The issue that I would see is that he's likely to use Shout multiple times unless you tune your AI so that he uses it on everybody. So that's going to be very important that he uses Shout on them, on the whole party, and then he can use this barrier on himself. That's actually making him look like a kind of a bit of a bruiser with that HP total, with that single target resist, and you give him some AoE resist because I believe, I have to double check if you can equip Brigandine, but he can equip armor. It's a pretty nice, he's good that he can equip pretty much everything in the game. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention was the Spellblade. If you want to build him for magic damage, which was or magic base damage, that was a pretty effective strategy when the game came out. And the reason was because people weren't building Spirit very much. Now it's a very different time in the game's history or in the game's direction. It's not really as effective a strategy at this point. And if you want to build both attack and magic, that is very difficult to do, as we've seen with units like Queen, and I rated Queen really lowly because of this exact problem. However, with Ramza, you really want to take advantage of what's one of his best moves here, which is his Limit Burst, because his Limit Burst got a big potency boost from 200 to 240. It had the 100% hit chance already, but now it has a full Dispel, which is just a really big deal. The range on it is the same. It's pretty good. This is such a big limit burst, and if you were able to build magic, that would be such a huge boost for him, but you can't do it at the expense of attack. He needs to be able to do attack-based damage, to use Shimmering Blade, to use his other skills as well, like his whatever that triple strike is, and the one that has like one range. You want him to be using all of those types of things. At the end of the day, he's not going to be your carry. He's going to be a support. You can think about his damage, his effects doing less damage, but he's added damage to literally everybody in the party via shouts. And if they all got like 200, 300 more damage on their attacks, well, if you take that, pull that all together, all of a sudden his attacks don't look so weak, right? But what really depends here, is thinking about where is he actually going to fit in a light team, because light teams are mostly evade built, and it's just really tricky to see him work. And for the same reason I gave Queen a bad rating is the same reason I would give Ramza a bad rating. I am really excited to use him, and I am going to use him a ton myself. But if you were a new player, or if you were a experienced player that missed Ramza, I'm just telling you, go for him. If you love Final Fantasy Tactics, he's going to be a super fun unit. He's going to be effective for you for sure. You're going to love him. But he's not going to be a meta-defining unit, and he's not going to change anything in a big way at the top level for anyone's account. Next up is Delita, and it's my second favorite tactics unit, the other tactics unit that I already have, and I have to rate him the second worst. Oh, what am I doing here? It's because he's a fire unit, really, at the end of the day. It's also just a bit because of his lack of range, his need to... He wants to use his Paladin sub, but he also really wants his Squire sub. He's kind of a poorly built unit in a lot of ways. He is going to be a very, very powerful unit. He's tricky to use because he's so weak to magic and magic-based attacks. But he is. Let's take a look before we give him a final verdict here. Basically, for his Master Ability 2, the big thing is that he got two big things. One is defense penetration, and the other is he automatically starts with Saintly Wall for every fight. So that's a really big deal, to have that physical reduction. No matter what, it's automatically applied. We love to see that. The defense penetration is also pretty good. His passive here, the acquired AP up, also gives him 40% slash resist penetration, and it gives him 25 accuracy. So again, this is a really good spot to be in. And if we go take a look at his stats really quickly here, you can see that he does have decent luck. He has okay dex, and with that accuracy, he's going to be in a decent accuracy range. He's again got that 4k HP range, so it's not tank HP, but it's not weak HP either. Otherwise, his agility is pretty decent. His attack is really decent, considering that we also, when we go back to passives, he has the self-sacrifice to get another 60% attack. But then when you look at that decrease of resistances and you compare it against the resistances that he has here, which is only 10% slash, 10% missile, 20% weakness to magic, that's really going to put him in a dangerous zone. Now, of course, that self-sacrifice looked a lot better than the global version, and that's because that is the upgraded JP version. He is going to lose more resistances in global until that upgrade comes out. So that's just something that you have to keep in mind. So while Ramza had single target resistance, he had a barrier of his own, and he also had protect. Delita doesn't quite have the same type of defensive buffs aside from his physical barrier. However, he is going to get access on his paladin sub to courage, and we do really like that. Now, why I've said that is it's kind of a trade-off is because when you look at his Squire sub, he's going to miss out on the meditation buff, which is a 60% attack and magic buff as well as a AP consumption down. Now with Delita, he can use bells, and we have way more ways to decrease AP consumption, so this isn't as big a deal. Like I said, he's already really strong. He's got 573 attack, he's got a 60% attack boost on him, plus another 60% active boost here if you need it. I personally would prefer that he is using the Paladin sub so that he can be using Courage. I think that makes a lot more sense than using Meditate, although some people may disagree with me. I think that being able to survive damage is just going to be a bigger deal. Now, his other upgrade is going to be that he gets the Karma Sword upgrade. The fire resistance in peril is going to come before the damage. It's going to make this an absolutely insane attack. Like, it's going to deal so much damage, and it's going to one-shot units. It's going to one-shot ice units, that's for sure. So this looks really good. Obviously, big PvE implications as well. However, for PvE, a lot of people have rain to do their fire imperiling anyway, and then he's got chaining options, so he would make a lot more sense than Delita anyway. But then we also get this new sword skill, which is going to dispel auto revive or re-raise, and it also has a pretty nice range here. So one of Delita's weaknesses is that his range is pretty low. Like when we look at these types of skills, that's actually stone throw right there, they're really low range. When we look at his sub job, you still have some pretty low range 3-range skills. Judgment Blade, one of the best skills around, just because of its damage and its chance to inflict stop, has a really insanely low range, which is just such a bummer. So when you look at Paladin, it also gives you access to Taunting Blade, which is a really high range, big AoE height, big nice range height. Like, that's going to be a really nice option for him, even if you don't necessarily want him to have hate. Hopefully you're building a team where you're killing the other team as quickly as possible, plus he's going to have that courage. So this upgrade, this job 25 ability, is a big deal. It's a really big deal, but still those same problems that kind of made him unsuccessful in his previous iteration is his range, his weakness to magic, his weakness in general to a lot of damage. It's going to make him harder to use now that there's lots of penetration, lots of high damage units. He had his time in the sun. I'm going to say it. Like, he killed so many Agriases for me. He was my tank in guild battle against the dark meta, the dark bros. I actually used him quite a bit there because he had pierce resistance against Kayn. So he had lots of applications. So same advice as Ramza. If you love him, you can build him. He'll do his job and he'll be lots of fun, but he's just not going to be a top tier unit. That's just the way that it is. Second to last, we're going to be talking about Orlandeau, and I do think that Orlandeau is one of the better positioned tactics units. When we look at his master ability, there wasn't a lot there. I mean, at the time, 5 defense was actually kind of a big deal, but he gets a whole lot when we look at his master ability too, including the lightning buff, including defense penetration, and also including some major resistance buffs. So 10% slash, 15% missile, and 15% magic. That is all really good to look at. His TMR is still pretty interesting because it has defense, agility, and a damage barrier. Even if it has 1 cast, this is something to look out for new players. When we take a look at his final stats, once those upgrades are made, his slash resist is now at 30%, his strike is at 10, his missiles at 25, his magic is not nearly as bad, now at 5%. That is a big deal. The fact that he got those resistance buffs and the other units did not, that's kind of telling. It's kind of interesting that they did that. His attack looks really low, but don't worry, because he has a self-sacrifice Self-Sacrifice buff that will give him 60% attack. His HP is the highest we've seen so far from the tactics units, and it's at a pretty good spot. So he is looking like he could actually be built out more as a bruiser, but he's still going to have access to all that good stuff that made him so effective previously in the game. So taking a look at his kit, there is the self-sacrifice buff that he had before. The 8% reduction in resistances is what you're going to see, on Delita's kit that we saw. We saw the 3% for the upgraded soldier job. That's not going to be present on global just yet. But something else we have to look at for Orlandeau is that he gets some slash resist penetration from the knight sub job, and that is also not in global yet. But at some point you can think, or that that knight is going to get upgraded, and a big weakness of Orlandeau, which is that he didn't get any slash resist penetration, is going to be fixed, and that will make him definitely more appetizing as a attacker. He's also going to get AoE resistance as an option, so if you wanted to, you could make him even more of a bruiser. So when we take a look at his kit and the upgrades that we saw here, one of the biggest ones I think is the, kind of his big skill, the Armor Crush. It had that 25 defense break, which was such a big deal back when it came out, even though it was a small potency attack. Now it's a medium potency attack with a defense break and a 30% hit chance, and that's a 5-use skill. It's going to be his main skill. This is a really powerful skill. Love to see this. His self buff is also quite interesting because he gets an attack buff, which is not new, but he also gets the auto restore, and he also gets, when he's over 70% HP, a AoE resist upgrade. So he gets 40% AoE resist. That is a pretty nice survivability thing, especially if you're using him with a tank, then hopefully he's taking AoE damage. I still think like pretty much any AoE hit should take him below 70%, but that means that maybe he could survive 1 to 2 more attacks, and that would be plenty. Otherwise, like some good things that you might look out for is the fact that he has a Lightning Imperil. That's kind of a big deal for Lightning teams, and that he has this new skill which has a slash resistance break 30% and then an ignore courage. So this is a really powerful skill to be able to kill all of those units with courage, which there are so many in the game now. But it's also PvE applicable because now he has a slash imperil, a defense imperil, a lightning imperil, and he also is going to get some penetration himself later on. This is a really good PvE kit, and Sneaky going to be a good pickup for your account if you want to do some lightning team shenanigans, but it also means that he's going to be really solid in PvP. When we look at his limit burst, it did get upgraded. The AP cost is down. This is a really big range, and it gives him haste, which is one of the best effects you could possibly put onto a limit burst. It's also going to give him 50% debuff resistance and 25% AP consumption decrease, which is very nice as well. So if he opens with this, if he pops bells or his new refresh or whatever it is, and then he opens with this, hopefully he'll be able to put in some more attacks pretty easily. There's also some pretty interesting stuff on the knight sub job. He doesn't get any of this right now, but in the future, again, is going to make him a really interesting bruiser type character and give him access to even more damaging skills. Same thing with Samurai. Samurai got a bunch of buffs as well, so there's lots to look forward to with Orlandeau. He's definitely in a much stronger position than JP thought he was when he first came out, which really sucks for JP if they didn't pull for him, because then he got all of these buffs afterwards. Kind of a dick move by Gumi. When we look at his character one more time here, I just want to mention, and it's kind of the same with all these characters, they're all 80 cost characters, which is a pretty important stat to be at for limited guild battles, for limited class matches or pickup matches or anything like that. This is very handy to have, and I love to see it, for a unit that is going to be as offensively, capable as Orlandeau is. So this is a unit that I would actually say, like, if you wanted to buff up your Lightning squad, especially if you were starting into Lightning with Lightning 13, the collab character, then this would be a really good addition. Just like with Snow, I said, you could go for Alaya and Velis when they come back or come to the game. This would be a good addition to Lightning teams. Now, Lightning teams that already have Cloud, they already have Lightning, they already have a lot of Lightning units on their team. they don't necessarily really need Orlandeau. So you could actually make this a point where you skip him and save some Visior, but he is a good unit, and he is a unit that I was very interested in before I decided to pull for Snow. Last but certainly not least, actually, in fact, I think she's the best of all the collab units for tactics, is Agrias. Now, one of the things that makes her the best is her TMR, the Holy Knight armor, because it gives you Protect and Shell. This is a staple tank TMR. Now, it has dropped off a little bit with Joom's TMR coming out, but it's still really good. The only demerit against it is that it has one use instead of two, but it's still really effective, and it's still a really nice HP piece as well. When we look at Agrias's Master Ability 2, she didn't really get a lot, but she did get one thing that I thought was pretty important, which is 15 more spirit. It's going to make her a really good magic damage tank. The other thing is that she got 5 more single target resistance, and then she got the team buff as well for ice units. Let's go ahead and take a look at Agrias's stats. At 120, she gets some pretty good HP. She also will have tank attack, like that's what she has at the end of the day, but you really can't think about it that way because she is going to offer more on attack than a lot of other tanks because of her varied status effects, and she can actually win matches with those. She also has that amazing 50% charm resistance, which you love to see, and then 25 spirit is such a good spot to be starting at, even a little bit of innate defense as well. She's on the slower side of units, but that's okay. When we look at her resistances, they're actually pretty bad except for magic resistance, but that's okay because she does have all of that single target resistance, and we can boost up her AoE resistance as well. Taking a look at her passives, she has a lot of different ways that you can build her. With her paladin passive, you get HP and defense. You know, with the cleric passive, that is eventually going to get that agility upgrade. Right now it does not give agility in global, but it will later on, and that's 15 more spirit and 12% more agility. That's insane. You can actually make her pretty fast when you have both of those on. And then her own passive gets upgraded to give some agility, to give innate hate, and then to give AP consumption down, which is pretty huge all around for a tank. All of those things are pretty good. So when you look at her future prospects as a tank, she'll actually be pretty fast if once this cleric passive gets upgraded. And she'll also have a pretty insane amount of spirit. Now, if you want to see kind of like how much spirit she can get, you can look at my Should You Pull Snow video, because I do a comparison between the two units, Snow and Agrias, and I do go over how much spirit she can possibly have before you even put equipment and espers on her and stuff. So it's pretty nutty. She's really good against those magic-based attacks. She also has a great passive that reduces all types of damage taken. You love to see it. Snow doesn't have any counter damage reduction, so this is good to see. Then looking at her new skills here, so the upgrade to one of her skills, it's her stasis blade is going to have a 30% hit chance, which is really nice, and also dispel re-raise. Sorry, this is so effective on a tank, because when you talk about Delita, I really killed them for Judgment Blade having this lower range. But when you look at Agrias, you're always running her as a tank. People are coming to her, so she gets to use this a lot more often. This was already a game changer because when she put stop on people, that was it. One of the weaknesses of it was the 30 AP, but now you have AP consumption down, and you also have 30% hit chance. And when we looked at her stats, she's not incredibly accurate, but she's higher than average with her dex and her luck, so she's in a good spot. Now, the fact that you actually could be hitting some evade units and stripping their re-raise, even if you miss, and if you hit, great, then that is just really, really solid. She also gets a barrier break and a dispel for protect. This is kind of a weird one. It doesn't really help her tank any more than it, it's a good skill, right? It's not what she needed at all. The range is weak. The AP cost is great for the medium damage, and obviously it is going to help your team out quite a bit if someone's attacking her and she's able to actually strip that protect. It could make the rest of your team get through faster if you're attacking another tank and you can take their barrier and their protect off. Maybe it just makes her a really solid tank for helping out your DPS. I don't know, but you would have loved to see something more defensive there, but she does get a lot of great defensive buffs already. And the other thing we should mention for new players is this limit burst. It's just so insane. So this limit burst has a surprising range because of the 4 AoE line here. It lines up more than you think it would, and when she hits with this, it has the 67% chance chance to inflict confusion, which is a game changer, right? This can end the match right there. If someone all of a sudden is not attacking anymore, or they're attacking their own team, you're going to win that auto match right away. So it's a really big deal for a tank to have multiple effective status effects on their kit. Agrias has those. She has insane spirit and magic resistance, and I think that she can overcome her weak resistances on the other categories, and that makes her the most usable unit out of all of these units because she is a tank. And when you look at the roles in War of the Visions, we get a lot more DPS. Obviously, they're the most common unit that comes out. So when you see a tank come out, first of all, we're not getting that many tanks. That has multiple applications. One, you have to wait a long time for one to come back. And two, if you miss the chance to pull for one, especially limited, you don't know when you'll be able to get them again. Like if you don't pull for Jum or King Mont, you can always get them later, but you just don't know when that is. But if you don't have any tanks, then this is a really good opportunity to get a tank. Now, I do want to mention that in my Should You Pull Snow video, I actually recommended Snow over Agrias. At the end of the day, they're both really good. They actually work really well in a team together. So Agrias and Snow and Velis is a great team, and Agrias is going to do a much better job of tanking against magic-based attacks than Snow is. So you can honestly use her in a lot of content still, and she is 80 cost. So I do recommend that people pull for her if they want a magic tank. If they want, you know, one tactics unit, this is the best one to get. And I think that I don't really have to convince that many people. I think that's kind of the general sentiment of a lot of the players out there. That's going to be it for this video. I hope it was useful for you. It was a little more boring than my other videos, but all the information's there. So hopefully it helps you make some decisions, because there are a lot of decisions to be made. I'm going to be making a VC video tomorrow for my Should You Pull the Final Fantasy Tactics Vision cards. We do get the Blades of Grass for free. I do think that everybody should go for the Science card. Just going to say that right now. It is a really, really good card because it's agility for literally every single unit. It's worth it in my eyes, especially because it's limited. But otherwise, we'll see you all soon enough with some that video and also the MR video.